Thank you all for attending today. I want to thank you so much for attending the first Manatee Tiger Bay Luncheon, where we have our panel. Thank you so much for those of you who supported our awards luncheon, our Pat Glass Scholarship Awards luncheon. It was a great success. We were able to give away a total of $6,000 in scholarships. And that was the first time we've been able to give away scholarships, and that is something we implemented in the last year. So we are very, very excited to be able to help the new leaders that are coming up in our community. My name is Xtavia Bailey. I will be your moderator today, and I am the president. I'm going to ask Mr. Kevin Wright to come forth to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please give him a round of applause as he comes forward. You can come up, Kevin.
All right, if you'd all please join me as I lead in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I want to go ahead and recognize we have a couple of our dignitaries. Would you please stand? We have the Bradenton City Council member, and we also have the mayor. Please stand so they can acknowledge you. Thank you so much for attending. I do want to quickly, if we do have any veterans or active duty members, if you would please stand, we'd like to recognize our veterans. Now, if your phone is on, please make sure that you silence your phone before we begin the program. So today we're going to be speaking about the topic law enforcement and mental health. Throughout the United States, we have seen a lot of mental health patients struggling. And the question is how does the mental health community and law enforcement work together to be able to handle these situations appropriately? Not only so the mental health patient does not get hurt, but also for our law enforcement that is actually responding. So today we have speakers Sheriff Rick Wells with Manatee County Sheriff's Office. We have Melissa Larkin Skinner, CEO, Centerstone of Florida, and we have Dr. Bob Nolan with mental health. He's a mental health counselor. Our first speaker is going to be Sheriff Wells. He told me not to read his bio. He just said he is the best sheriff in the world, and I like him very much. Please give him a round of applause as he comes forth.
Thank you, Xavier. Welcome, everyone. I really always cherish the opportunity, the time to be here. I really want to talk about two things when it comes to mental health. I want to talk about how we, as law enforcement officers, address the mental health crisis that we deal with in the community. I also want to talk briefly about how we deal with mental health issues within our own agencies and how that is affecting law enforcement. So I've been doing this job now for almost 40 years, and I could tell you that when I first started, mental health and ways to address mental health issues within the community was really never a topic of conversation. We never really trained on it. We never really had any type of policies in place to deal with those that were struggling with mental health. And when you think about it, law enforcement, most of the time, is really the worst. It's the worst position for us to be in. That's really not who you want at the scene of a mental health crisis if you can help it. Sometimes we're forced into those situations because they become violent, but really we had no training to really de-escalate and to help those that were struggling with whatever mental health crisis they had going on at the time. Luckily, we have acknowledged that weakness throughout the last several years, and we now really concentrate on training new officers and even the old officers like myself, making sure they understand that there are techniques and there's things that we need to do differently when we are addressing any type of a call with a mental health crisis. The biggest thing that we have in our community that we concentrate on the most is the services, the wraparound services that we have available. Centerstone being a big part of that. But the officers have to understand, we have to identify very quickly that this is someone struggling with mental illness, and then we have to call out those services and get them to the scene. We never had that available back in the old days. We never had any wraparound services. It was law enforcement dealing with a subject, and most of the time, that subject having to go to jail. And that's where they ended up. I am also very proud to say that we've been working with the state attorney, Cynthia Evers, and also State Attorney Ed Brodsky. We understand that we are at times going to have to arrest those that are struggling with mental illness because they've committed a crime. But can we put them through a special court? And we now will have a mental illness court, a mental health court. I don't know what they're going to title it, but it's going to be specifically designed to deal with those cases. Because a lot of times they have committed a crime because of the illness. And that's what we have to look at. And the last place I want them is in my jail. I don't want them spending time in the facility. What we want is to be able to identify, get them through the court process and get them to a facility where they can receive the help that they really, really need. So we continue to train and we continue to make adjustments in the way that we respond to those calls. A lot of times we will take a barricaded subject that we know has a mental illness issue, and we will call a team from Centerstone. We have people that will come out and try to talk that person down and try to talk them out of the house. Why is that important? Because they are better equipped to deal with that person than we are, and sometimes just the presence of law enforcement will aggravate them even further. So we try to take as much time as we possibly can. And what we tell especially the young officers is that if we have to spend 8 hours here trying to talk this person out, we'll spend 8 hours trying to talk them out. We're in no hurry. We're not trying to get in there and try to aggravate the situation even more so than it is. So when we can have a therapist or someone from Centerstone or some of the other services that we have out, get them to the scene, get them communicating with that person, we've had great success. Sometimes they're not going to listen, but we just buy the time. And that's something that really has been beneficial to us is understanding that we can take as much time as we need to. And we just have to get the right people out there in place. Sometimes it may not be us or Centerstone, and this may be a parent. They need to talk to mama, they need to talk to dad, they need to talk to somebody who can also talk them down and get them into a better place in their mind, and we can then get them to the facility, get them the help that they need. I also want to talk briefly about, law enforcement too. We've had to deal with some of the mental health issues that we have identified. When I started 40 years ago, PTSD was not even something that we knew about. Never discussed it, didn't know what it was. We just basically, the training we got was suck it up, buttercup. Right, you got to go. You're in law enforcement. You just got to move. Right, you roll with the punches. But it's taken a long time. But what I know and what others know that have been in this line of work, these young officers, they see the worst that this community has to offer each and every day. And I want you to think about the situations that they are put in every day. They see more death. They see more suicides. They just see a lot more. I think I got Josh Kramer here who retired from Brady Police Department. They just see a lot more of the critical incidents that we did early on in our career. So we've been able to put peer groups together. One thing about law enforcement officers is that we don't like to talk about what we have been through. We don't like to go home. We don't like to share that with our families because it's really not something you want to talk about to your families. You try to shield them as much as you can from all the bad things that you have seen each and every day. But cumulative PTSD is basically it's different than PTSDs, but it's built from day to day, right? Over time. They're seeing these bad scenes, car crashes, homicides, suicides, each and every day, and after a while, it's going to catch up to you. So we've got peer groups in place to be at these scenes, to talk to officers right away, to hopefully get them to a point where if they need to talk to a professional, they will do so. That's another problem that law enforcement officers have. We don't like to get labeled. We think we're going to be labeled. We don't want to go talk to a professional, but we know now it's critical that at some point that we do that. So we will talk to them and get them to a point where they're comfortable with talking to the professionals that we have here today. So a lot going on, a lot of things that law enforcement continues to discuss, to train on, to deal with these situations. I can tell you that there's never been more training than there is today for law enforcement when it comes to mental health issues in our community, and I can only hope that that continues to improve. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. Please give him another round of applause. Next, we have Dr. Bob Nolan, mental health counselor. Dr. Nolan is a licensed mental health counselor in Florida with over 25 years of experience working as a counselor, college professor, and consultant. He has worked with his clients a wide range of concerns, including depression, anxiety, relationship issues, parenting problems, lifestyle changes, personality disorders, bipolar disorder, and ADHD. He has also helped many people who have experienced physical and emotional trauma, as well as substance abuse issues. His counseling style is considered personable. He believes in treating all people with compassion, respect, and sensitivity. He also believes that the clients know themselves the best. His approach combines cognitive behavioral, humanistic, psychodynamic, and rational emotive counseling. He will tailor the relationship and treatment plan to meet individual, unique, and specific needs. He has over 30 years in his practice. Please give him a round of applause as he comes forth.
I really got to trim down that bio. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you all for having us, too. I really appreciate it. It's a very valuable thing. I just wanted to say how much, in other communities, we have some serious issues between the community and law enforcement. I'm very grateful to live in this community where we have people leading in law enforcement, such as Sheriff Wells and the job that he does. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. I wanted to give you all a little bit of a perspective on some of the changes that have gone on in mental health in the past several years. When I was practicing in 2020, the beginning of the year, I had 30 to 35 clients that I saw pretty much in the office on a weekly basis. If we fast forward then to the end of May 2020, my practice went from that 30 to 35 people to about 105 clients. Now, it also changed in perspective that I wasn't seeing nearly that amount of clients in my office because something happened in 2020. And our lives were changed because of it. And one of the things that we saw is that there was this acceptance of virtual sessions. And it happened because people were demanding it, and it happened because managed care companies recognized the value of it. So we moved from in-sessions or in-office sessions to these virtual sessions, which I'll be honest with you, at first I was a little tepid about it because I was always kind of the guy that wants to sit across the office from somebody and hear what they have to say and see their body language and make eye contact with them. But this was the new way of doing business. So I'm working, 40 hours a week, seeing clients, and we also saw some changes in the structure of our sessions in that these platforms began to develop, like BetterHelp, like Talkspace. And one of the things that they recognize is that maybe we can do even shorter sessions than the traditional therapy hour. So they moved to 30-minute sessions. Managed care saw this as an opportunity and started paying for those 30-minute sessions, or 45-minute sessions, or the traditional hour, which was, technically 53 minutes is what that is. What we saw, too, is that the stress of COVID brought out real pathology in folks that had a tendency towards, whether it be depression or anxiety, and they were in need of service. So business was booming throughout 2020, and it continued on into the next year, and it really hasn't slowed down a whole lot. Right now, I'm seeing probably, I think I have at last check 76 clients. I see virtually all of them by the computer, by phone, by messaging. I have 3 people that come to my office. Everybody else I'm seeing virtually, which it gives us a great opportunity to provide the service. And that's what to see how necessary that service is, it's amazing to me. And the way that it has been accepted is pretty great. One of the things that is very important for law enforcement, for all of us who do this job, is to have that sense of empathy. And it has been described that empathy is a superpower. And I stole that directly from Ms. Larkin Skinner. So she's the one who actually said that. And I'm going to keep using it too, Melissa. So yeah, I will. And empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is my emotional reaction to what I interpret your situation is. And it's a feeling. Empathy is a rational process whereby I assess what it is that you are going through. And that's helpful. Sympathy is not helpful in my line of work because it's my emotion that I'm playing on. Empathy is important so I can know what that person's feeling. The flip side of our superpower is the kryptonite that we call compassion fatigue. And that happens when we just have done too much. When I'm looking at my schedule and I see that I got Elliot at 4 o'clock and I'm going, oh my God, that guy is such an, and I'm going, that's compassion fatigue. And I need a day off. So I have to pay attention to that. People will say to me, Bob, how do you stay so calm listening to people's problems all day long? And I say, you've never seen me in traffic. Because I promise you, I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to head west on Manatee Avenue, and I'm going to be dropping F-bombs all the way to 43rd Street. That's my therapy. So, one of the things to remember is when someone is in a very serious episode of mental health crisis, the one thing that they're feeling is fear. They're afraid. They're afraid they're losing control. They're afraid they're not going to get over this. They're afraid no one understands. And they feel hopeless. So if there's anything that I can say going forward is that have compassion. Try to have empathy. And when I hear from people about someone in a panic attack does not need to hear calm down. Because if they could, they would. Someone who has depression doesn't need to hear, snap out of it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. These people don't even know if they have feet that day. They can't pull themselves up. If they would, they could. So please, if we could just understand that these people are in crisis, that they're going through something that they feel out of control with, and they need help. And they just need your understanding. Thank you all very much for having us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nolan. Please give him another round of applause. One thing I do understand is that therapy in traffic, I don't want anyone to see me in traffic driving. No one. That's not the best part of me. Next, we have Melissa Larkin Skinner, CEO of Centerstone. She has also instructed me to tell people she's lived here all of her life, and she is also a great, I'm just messing with you. Melissa Larkin Skinner has served as CEO of Centerstone in Florida since 2016. She has earned a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from USF and an MBA from St. Leo University, a licensed mental health counselor with nearly 3 decades of experience working in the behavioral health care field. Larkin Skinner started as a volunteer and has practiced in variety of clinical and leadership roles. And if you know Melissa, she's always out advocating for mental health. She does it with passion and she does it with class. Please welcome her as she comes forth.
So just so you know, I also attended Manatee Community College, woo woo, Southeast High School, Bradenton Middle School, Wakeland Elementary, Blanche Daughtry Elementary. I think that's about it.
Hurricanes.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm not talking to you anymore today. No, actually, I root for all of our teams, all of our kids. They deserve it. So Centerstone used to be Manatee Glen. Some of you have been around a long time, would be more familiar with us by that name. We did become part of a larger company. We are our own 501c3. We are a nonprofit. Sometimes people think we are a for-profit, but we are not, because I personally would not work for a for-profit. 1955, we've been around in this community. And no, I am not one of the founders. I actually had a legislator ask me that seriously one time in Tallahassee, and it's a great story to tell, so I can't be mad at him. It was great. So Manatee County has a population around 412,000 today. About 18% of adults in Florida are struggling with a mental health issue, a mental illness, if you will. So that means in Manatee County, that's 74,000 people. 74,000, and that's not including kids, that's just adults. So in Manatee County, we have right at about 61 beds that are adult psychiatric inpatient beds. 61, that is it. So if you think about the 74,160 people who need treatment, Centerstone treats around 13,000 Manateans every year. You already know people aren't getting necessarily the outpatient treatment they need. I mean, thanks to other folks like Dr. Nolan and the other providers we have in the community, of which we do not have enough. I can tell you that without a doubt. We serve as many as we can, but we need more. Some of it is money, some of it is workforce, some of it is people don't want the services. People don't want to admit they are struggling. People don't want to seek out the services, and people do not want to pay for the services because they're not fun to pay for. Even if you have health insurance, you probably have a copay that will cost you every time you go to a therapy session, which for most people would be about once a week while they're in therapy. Every time you go, you'd have to pay $30, $50. So even if you have healthcare coverage, do you really want to pay that every single week? I don't. I'd rather go to the movies. I'd rather do something fun, go out to eat. So while we can talk about lots of things like the government and law enforcement and providers don't do enough and we don't have enough and we don't have enough of anything, it's also our mindset. As human beings, we don't like to ask for help. We don't like to admit we need help. And then even if we do and we can pay for it, we don't really want to pay for it. And then there's the whole host of folks that can't pay for it. Dr. Probstfeld and I were just talking about people making $15 an hour. So we know Floridians voted to make the, minimum wage. That's it. The minimum wage, $15 an hour, which I think will go in effect next year, 2025, I believe, or 26. Think about how much that is. And I heard the other day, like the cost of an apartment here, the rent is $2,300 a month. People can't survive. They're sure as heck not gonna spend $50 a week or $30 a week if they are working, making $15 an hour. They have health insurance company or coverage. They're not gonna spend $15 a week or $50 a week or whatever it is we charge for their copay to get therapy because they need to eat. They need to feed their kids. They need to buy clothes for their kids. So the problem is complex, and it's much bigger than there's not enough. It's just so much bigger than that. I mean, there's not enough for the people that absolutely have to have it, the ones who need it, the ones who can pay for it. There sure isn't enough for all the other folks that don't want it, can't have it for some reason. The reason I'm telling this story is it's a little off track, but it's to get people to think broader, to expand your thinking, to realize there are no easy answers. And I can go to Tallahassee and I can advocate for more money, and I can get more money, and then I don't have enough people to hire because not enough people even want to do the work. It's hard work. And we got to find new ways. So we got to find other ways. And we will work on that. I'm always open to new ideas. I don't ever like to keep doing something just because that's the way it's always been done. I'm one of those people that pokes at it and says, we got to find other ways. We got to stretch our boundaries. So if you think about back to the 74,000 people who need probably therapy, maybe not everybody, all 74,000 don't need psychiatric hospitalization, but a portion of them do. But the most we can serve in a year, if we have people stay around 5 days when they're admitted, and every single one of our beds is full, the most we can serve in a year is 4,453 of those people. So that's back to there's not enough, and there isn't, but we're constantly working on that. A little bit more about Centerstone is that we provide crisis intervention training. It's actually going on this week. Today, is today Thursday? Yeah, today's Thursday. Tomorrow's the last day. It is a 40-hour training for law enforcement. I was actually one of the original instructors, and I remember how hard it was. The sheriff's office has always been supportive, but they used to have to force their officers to come, their deputies to come to crisis intervention training. But what it does is a bunch of experts and people in the field who say, okay, these are how you can tell. These are signs of mental health issues. These are some of the things you can do. We're just adding to your toolbox. We're not trying to tell you what to do or to do your job differently. We're just adding to the toolbox. We've been doing that for 21 years, and we used to do one a year, and now we do like 4 a year, sometimes more than that. So when Dr. Nolan talked about how lucky we are to be in this community, let me tell you how lucky we are to be in this community, because we have law enforcement professionals who get it. And I can't say that about everywhere that I've been in the state of Florida or the U.S. We also have mobile response teams. The sheriff was talking about how call Centerstone and they'll come out. So our mobile response teams, we've been doing that for 20 years as well. And we'll go out and respond to the schools or to law enforcement to try to de-escalate the situation and give some guidance about, okay, what do we do now? And maybe that person needs to be hospitalized. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just need some support that we can provide them so that they can just go home. And then the mental health court. It's actually called Comprehensive Treatment Court, and what we do is try to get people out of jail immediately who are identified that have a mental health issue, and we start providing them with services. And it is a fantastic agreement between the sheriff, the public defender, the state attorney's office, court administration, and I don't think I left anybody out, and Centerstone, to get folks out of the jail that absolutely do not need to be there. They committed a crime due to their mental illness. It's a misdemeanor, and we don't want them sitting in there taking up jail space. So I'll leave you with also Miami-Dade Jail is the largest psychiatric hospital in the state of Florida. That is the sad state of where we are. That is not unique to Florida. Just so you know, it's not something that only happens in Florida. It's all over the country. I think there are 44 states. I read a statistic. 44 states have more people with mental health issues in jails than they do in psychiatric facilities. But if you think about just the number of beds I told you we have in Manatee County for psychiatric hospitalization, and Sheriff, how many beds do you have?
In the jail?
Yes.
1,200.
Right. So the sheriff has a lot more beds than I do. And the intersection or the interface between law enforcement and folks with mental illness or mental health issues is inevitable. It's inevitable. So we do all these things. We do training, we do partnerships, We create programs, and we work together to try to make it so that folks that are experiencing a mental health issue, and I should throw addiction in here as well, get the treatment they need. Because even if they need to be incarcerated because they did, in fact, commit a crime, they're going to come out someday too, and we want to make sure they get the services they need then as well, because we don't want them to go back in. So I told you a lot of things. Hopefully you'll have some questions for all of us. I am very, very glad to be in this community. And technically I didn't come here till I was 3, but I consider it my home, and I do everything I can to make it a better place to live. And I'm grateful for all of you, because I think all of you do the same.
Thank you so much, Melissa. You always speak so very passionately about what you advocate for, and we're lucky to have you all in our community. Please give our speakers a round of applause. So now we're going to allow you all to ask questions. We're going to do it a little bit different, so if you do have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll come to you. I'm going to start the first question out for the panel. I see you, Jane. Would you all support having a position, and some of you may know, I went through the academy in '03. We did not have any type of, Sheriff Stuvey was one of my trainers. That's when your dad was still here. But we didn't train about mental health. So you have to think about, it's almost like veterans when you're in the war and they come home and they have to face reality again of being home and being reacclimated back into real life, transitioning. If you go to a call and there's a murder, and then you have to, in that call, do your paperwork and finish your shift out, you keep going. Would you all support a mental health person if we know that there is a call where we know it's a known mental health issue? Would we support someone accompanying a law enforcement officer to help with the situation, or do you think the training would be enough?
Who do you want to answer that?
Anyone on the panel, especially you, Sheriff.
Of course I would support it, that's a given.
Will you take it, because they need to hear you on the recording?
Sure. There's actually a model, they refer to it as co-responder models. And it's definitely something that has worked in other places. And it's something that we've been talking about here as well. We're actually working with the Bradenton Police Department right now. They got a grant to have it. It's like anything else, though, it does have to be paid for. I mean, people can't work for free. So the sheriff has to have the dollars, or we have to have the dollars, and then we work on a partnership. But it's definitely something that has proven across the U.S. to be successful.
Sheriff, she's coming.
Very much in favor of any type of program that we can put in place that's going to help with the mental health side. Funding is an issue. We do a lot of things that people don't know about in the homeless camps, and Centerstone goes with us, and there's a lot of mental illness out here in these homeless camps, and it's not just addiction. So we're dealing with that, but I think it comes down to funding. I don't even like to use that as an excuse till we continue to try to get other funding to knock down recidivism in the jail. We just talked about that yesterday, Melissa and I, at another meeting. So if we can get the funds for a position, we won't need two, because we'll use it every day. So I'm in favor of it. What about you, Doc?
Yeah, I would say definitely I'm in favor of that. One of the things that comes to mind is that I would also like to see us as practitioners, as counselors, coming to an understanding of what is the experience of law enforcement in this too. So for us to get some training to better understand what the experience is for them.
I want to add one thing, because we hear a lot of things about just get rid of law enforcement altogether and let, social workers go out. Believe me, that's not going to work.
No.
If for no other reason, we need to be there to protect them.
Yes.
We run into a lot of violence, and we handle that violence, and then we take care of whatever mental illness is going on in that person's life. But to send someone out there by themselves would be deadly in some situations.
I know we have another question. I do want to state this before we come to you, Jane. One of the boards, Centerstone does get funded as far as the children's services because we have the adult mental health, but we also missed the part where we were looking at our youth. And you have a lot of youth that are suffering from mental health also. So that might be a possibility to be able for the children's services to be able to pay for half of that worker and maybe talk to the county because I think we can't forget about our young people who are struggling with mental health also. Jane, you ready? I'm sorry, Alice.
Hi, I'd like to ask each one of you to address your thoughts on the so-called red flag laws that pertain to circumstances when someone with mental health issues comes in juxtaposition with law enforcement.
Are you talking about those with firearms?
Yes.
So that law was passed here several years ago, so, we're the ones that usually have to make that determination. So law enforcement gets called out to some type of a violent situation most of the time, maybe domestic, maybe, just someone with a gun threatening others in the neighborhood. So we have to evaluate to determine if this person is a threat, and then we have to take that information in front of a local judge if we do believe that they are going to hurt themselves or others, and that's what it's about. Are they going to hurt themselves or others, and is there a legit threat? And then we take that information to the judge, and they'll make a determination whether or not those guns should be held. But that's how it works here in the state of Florida. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I was interested in knowing if you would be in favor of or not in favor of a potential red flag law that would allow for the instantaneous removal of firearms from a home when a dangerous situation existed.
I think each case has to be determined separately. I wouldn't be in favor of just taking guns because one event happened. Not really sure if that's what you mean, but I think that the way we do it now, as far as evaluating each situation and each event, and then we make that determination and give that information to a judge. Not really sure if that's what you meant, but just take one incident and remove the guns forever. Is that what you're? But no, I'm not really sure.
Now, I've seen laws written in, for instance, in Connecticut where the guns are removed temporarily following a violent incident within a home.
And that happens here, but that person does have the avenue to get those guns back after they present their case in front of a judge that everything is now okay with them, they've gone through anger management, wherever the case is, but they'll get those guns back. You got anything you want to add to that? Doesn't like it.
I will, so that law came about in Florida after the Parkland school shooting. So the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission, that was actually one of our recommendations, was that red flag law. And I actually think the red flag law in Florida does a good job of balancing civil rights, the right to bear arms and own arms, with public safety. Because it is a temporary removal and you do have to go before the judge and people do have the opportunity to make an argument to get them back, and it's time limited or it can be extended. So as the sheriff said, looking at every single case as its own case and it has certain things that need to be considered. I actually think our law is a good one.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
I wanted to add one thing I forgot to say before, and that is the sheriff said law enforcement's the worst, people that can go out. I disagree with him on that. I actually think
Here
law
comes the
enforcement-
debate, I like it.
I actually think law enforcement is fine to go out, but it's like anything else. It's about going out and doing the right things, doing the best things possible. We each have a job to do, even in the co-responder model, we're each gonna have a job to do. But we all want the same thing, right? We all want the public to be safe, we want the person to be safe. And hopefully, just having, you know, in that model, having another set of eyes and a person who's looking at it a little bit differently would just offer a different perspective. But chances are, we're all working toward public safety, personal safety.
You have a question in the back? And then I see three. I saw Carol, Evelyn, and then Doc.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. You guys do a great job. Thank you for fighting for money for limited funding for very big jobs that require far more emotional capital, political capital, and financial capital than you ever get. But given limited resources in all of those arenas, what might be done differently to get to the prevention side? Because that 74,000 ain't going away.
All right, this is one of my favorite subjects. Upstream, right? I think, this is my personal opinion. Just let me be clear about that. I think what's important is that we teach our kids from the youngest age possible and in our school systems, because they're somewhat of a captive audience there. We need to teach them to how to make decisions, to identify emotions, and then learn to manage those emotions. Because we're all gonna be angry, but we're not gonna all go out and shoot somebody. So first it's identifying the anger, and then it's teaching them how to then manage the anger, how to respond, how to behave. Problem solving, critical thinking, all of those things need to be something that we are focused on teaching our kids every day of their lives. And I was having this discussion with some of my new employees on Tuesday. They were asking what should kids do in Florida because they're concerned about the way the gun laws are going, and what should we do in schools? Everybody's, you know, scared. And I don't have an answer. The only answer I have is the only behavior you can control is your own. We cannot account for the behavior of other people. We cannot legislate people's behavior. That, if we could, they wouldn't be in jails. We wouldn't have jails, right? We can't legislate people to stop being mean, to stop bullying, to stop saying mean words. What we can do is ourselves take personal responsibility and control our own behavior and how we respond, how we help others, how we support others. So the best thing for prevention is to teach kids that, how to handle all of those things.
I want to add to that because when I talk about law enforcement not being really the best group to go out to some situations, first of all, Melissa should have been a cop. Bottom line. Bottom line, she should have been a cop. I wish I would have recruited her a long time ago. And she brings up a good point when it comes to prevention. We are called to homes because a mother can't get their 12-year-old to get up and get dressed to go to school. That's not my job. That's not what we should be called for. But so now we go to these homes. A uniformed law enforcement officer is now trying to help this mother or the father get their kid up, and right away that kid now looks at us differently than they did before. And that's what I mean. We should not go to those type of calls. And when we decline, well, then we get called everything but, you know, a cop because we don't respond. But that's not the job of law enforcement, to raise your children. And those are the calls that we should not be responding to. And hopefully, you know, we're all about helping families, but that's not what we're here for. But we notice a lot, especially with mental illness, is that families don't know what to do. They don't know how to help their family member, so they call us. And we end up trying to do what they could be doing themselves.
I do. Very well said, Sheriff. I think it's an excellent point. It isn't your job to raise their kids. And I think what Melissa says is spot on. When it comes to prevention, it's about education. It's about building the self-esteem of our kids, that they believe in themselves and that they are proactive themselves and they continue on with the very same thing, because that's what builds a healthy community. And it's certainly mental health for the long run in their lifetime. If they feel good about themselves, they're going to carry themselves a certain way. They're not going to get messed up in stuff that's going to be bad for them because they feel good about themselves and they don't want to do anything to damage them.
Sheriff Wells, you talked about you have 1,200 beds in your jail. I assume there's a certain portion of those that people with mental health issues are occupying. Do you have the ability to try and put those individuals in a different place where they can get the kind of support they need while they're there?
We do, and I actually misspoke, I didn't want Melissa to feel bad, I've got 1,800. So, but yeah, and with everything else that we've tried to do, we've become more aware about trying to separate them from general population and trying to, we have a medical provider, and I made it a point several years ago that I want therapists inside the jail, right? So we want to separate, we want to get them in there. We're real big on recovery as well. We have the recovery pod. We bring in, faith-based, and we bring in experts, anybody that we can to try to get them into a better situation when they leave the jail. We're trying to fight addiction, and we're trying to fight mental illness. So we do more than most jails, but I think it's very important. But now, the critical part is identifying and getting them out of the criminal justice system altogether. So it can't be in gen pod, and that's where we're trying to get them out.
Go ahead.
Talking about that folks don't know how to handle mental illness, and I was a part of National Alliance for Mental Illness for a very long time, NAMI. Do you guys want to talk about what their resources are? They have educational classes that help people understand how to, I don't want to say how to measure and learn about mental illness. One of the most impactful trainings I ever did was teaching a classroom of parents who had schizophrenic kids and going through the exercise of showing them what that experience is like for that individual. It's very impactful, but do any of you want to talk about that resource and how it's available to the community?
Use my resource.
Sure, and I've decided that I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna grab a chair, so that we're all on the same side. I'm feeling very isolated over there.
You did something, I didn't want
I know, Xavier was trying to control me, I think.
It was the girls versus boys.
So, the National Alliance on Mental Illness is actually a phenomenal organization. It's a grassroots organization started by people who had children with severe mental illness, typically schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression that recurs. They have actually broadened their scope, thankfully, in the last 8 years or so to include more work. They used to concentrate on adults living with a mental illness, and now they do a lot more work with youth. So they have peers that go into schools, and they have a program that I shouldn't remember the name of, but I do not. But it's a program that makes kids not feel so alone. It's okay to not be okay. That kind of phrase can be very meaningful because dealing with different issues, and you'd think as human beings and all the time we've been on this planet, we would know better, but we have a tendency to feel alone in our thoughts, in our feelings. Like nobody else can possibly be feeling this way or thinking this way. There's something wrong with me, and we don't want to talk about it. So they have programming where they go in and they encourage kids to talk about it. You're not alone. Lots of people feel these similar feelings. And the executive director here for the Sarasota Manatee chapter of NAMI is my board chair too. So we work together to try to, advocate and further these types of services and programming for kids and adults.
I think this last question is Doc, and then you have Evelyn.
Thank you. First off, I just wanted to say I've worked in behavioral health in Manatee County for a while,
and I've definitely seen the sheriff's office, how they handle clients with care and compassion. I've witnessed it a lot, and it's something that you don't find in all the communities in the county, in the state, so thank you. My question is around stigma. I know we've talked a lot about it being a huge barrier for treatment. And I guess I'm just wondering if there's any ideas on how we can help community leaders promote language that is helpful. We just heard last week one of our community leaders talked about people who are homeless as people who choose addiction rather than work. So I was wondering if there's any ideas how we can help community leaders combat stigma so people don't feel ashamed about getting treatment.
The sheriff has more power than I do. He could just force it, I don't know. I think just by, if you know the best language to use that language. I don't think you can, so this was the other thing I said to my new staff, words have power, sure, but they only have the power we give them, actually. So I think it's complex like everything else. You can't force people to use a certain word or certain languages. It's like you can't stop them from using certain words. I was somewhere recently where whatever was said was even worse than that. When I used to do talks about opioids in this very room, actually, somebody said, well, why don't we just let them die? The people that were overdosing instead of giving them Narcan. Well, because we wouldn't do that to someone who needs their insulin. We wouldn't withhold insulin because they were not eating healthy. So just continuously using the language we like to hear, that's helpful. Continuously talking to others to maybe not respond to people who say things like that. Like, who cares what they think? Because they're not experts. Talk to the experts, listen to the experts, listen to the people who are presenting themselves in a supportive way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind is that what we have to do as practitioners, and it's one of the things I have taught my students, is that people are not their diagnosis. Don't call a person schizophrenic. They have schizophrenia. It's a condition that they have. It's not their identity. Don't treat them as if that is their identity. So it starts with us. And I think one of the things that comes to mind too is that when I get a new person in my practice, sometimes they'll go, I don't know what therapy's about. You know, I never thought that I was going to do this. And I talk to them about, it's a conversation. You're going to tell me about you and about your experiences and how you're feeling. And I want to give you feedback based on what it is that you tell me. I'm getting to know you. And so when we go out and talk to folks, everybody has conversations. So that's what therapy is. It's conversation. If you have something that's bothering you, wouldn't it be smart to talk to somebody who could help with that? So if we demystify it, I think it helps.
Forget the two professionals in the company. I mean, all I can tell you is that we have really done a lot, like I talked about earlier, just identifying law enforcement, our weaknesses when it comes to dealing with mental illness. So I think there's more training out there right now that they're trying to pass. There's a bill out there right now for basic recruit class law enforcement officers, just making sure that we're giving them the best training, up-to-date training, and what you're talking about is the very thing that we fight within my profession, that stigma, that being labeled and therefore not talking about the issues that will help us. And that's caused an increase in suicides over the last 10 years, alcoholism, you name it, cardiac arrest at the age of, we only last about 4 years when we retire compared to the rest of the population, because we don't deal with stress the right way.
That's so true.
Hopefully we'll continue to improve.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Doc is going to sign us out. Go ahead, Commissioner Kramer.
Right on the heels of what you're saying there, Sheriff, have you seen successes amongst that rank and file? Because a lot of the old timers, Power Cup might have been the nicest thing you could be called.
Yeah, I think we have, because the younger generation is more inclined to seek help than we were, just because of the way we were raised. The only good thing that we had back in the old days is that we would talk to one another, right? So we would talk within the ranks a little bit, but I think that they've been educated more than you and I, and therefore they know that seeking help is the best for them. So we have seen them take advantage of the services more so now than we did, 40 years ago.
I'm going to stand up. My name is Dr. Jim Whitman. I am a psychiatrist, and I've worked in the criminal justice system pretty much for my entire career. I've also worked with Senator Stone, as you know, particularly in the Manatee County Jail. I worked there twice for several years. And that sort of goes against what most people think, doesn't it? Most people think that there's no mental health care in jail. But that's not true. And collaborating with outpatient, trying to make the connection when people come out of jail, giving them an appointment at the very least, and a place to go, a place to get their meds. This is all very important. I wanted to just mention one thing. Jail is not hell. Actually, it beats homelessness and some other life situations. And it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get back on your meds. It's an opportunity to connect with the community mental health system. And it's relatively safe compared to some other places in the community. And it's supportive, because there are quite a few people in that population that are undergoing treatment. And the other thing that's very important is substance abuse is a big part of this issue. And they call it clean time, being in jail and off drugs. And they say, some people say, oh, that's not really that big a deal, but I think it is. Every minute you spend not on drugs or alcohol is an opportunity to turn your life around. And so I just wanted to share these thoughts, particularly with regard to mental health care in jails and how the community supports that, the sheriff supports that, very obviously. And so others have said here that the Manatee County situation is a good one, and I totally agree with that. So I'm hoping we'll be able to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. You done?
I just want to add real quick to that is that I've had several parents, if you've ever had anyone addicted to drugs or alcohol in your family, you know what I'm talking about. They will tell me, they will call me and say that for the first time in a long time, they were able to sleep because they knew that their loved one was safe, even though they were in the jail. But they said that they were safe and they didn't worry they could actually sleep. So that's my responsibility to take care of them, and I do everything I can to make sure that we give them the help that they need when they're in the jail. So I just, I know that that's not where people want to be, but there are a lot of families that struggle out there that are glad that they are somewhere and that they are alive. So, and I take that responsibility very seriously. Thank you.
Any other last comments before we close out? Thank you to everyone who attended the luncheon today, and please give our panelists another round of applause. Thank you so much for the questions. It helped educate a lot of us and give a lot more information. Next meeting will be April 27th. It's the future of politics, but under 40. So we will have under 40. I'm not under 40, but they will be all, we will have under 40 on both sides of the parties, and then we'll have some independents, allowing our youth to discuss where they think the politics is going here in the United States. Thank you to the Popies and our wait staff. Also, thank you to our news media for the coverage, Charles Clapsaddle, METV, ABC7. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you all next month. Thank you so much for being with us today. Have a great evening.